What if I told you the most celebrated artist of the 20th century once looked a woman in the eyes and told her that women are either goddesses or doormats? And what if I told you the man who said that left behind a trail of destroyed lives, breakdowns, suicides, shattered families, and yet the world still calls him a genius? Here's the uncomfortable question we're answering today. Was Picasso a genius despite his narcissism or because of it? Trust me on this one. The answer is messier than you think. Welcome back to Minds of History, the channel where we crack open the psychology of the people who shaped our world. Not the polished textbook versions. The real, complicated, sometimes disturbing human beings underneath. Today, we're stepping into the mind of Pablo Picasso, a man who painted over 13,000 canvases, redefined art itself, and treated the people who loved him like raw material. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because this is exactly the kind of story we tell every week. Alright, let's decode Picasso. Picasso's story starts with a detail most people have never heard. He was born dead. Or at least, everyone in the room thought so. The midwife gave up on the silent, motionless newborn until his uncle, a doctor, leaned over and blew cigar smoke into the baby's face. Little Pablo coughed, screamed, and never stopped demanding the world's attention again. You know what's funny? Even his first word was a prophecy. Not mama, not papa. He said piz, short for lapis, pencil. His father, Jose Ruiz, was an art teacher, a mediocre painter of pigeons, if we're being honest. And here's where the psychology gets interesting. Legend has it that when Pablo was around 13, his father watched him finish a painting, handed the boy his own brushes and palette, and vowed never to paint again. His son had surpassed him. Now, imagine what that does to a child's developing sense of self. Before puberty, Pablo learned a lesson that would define his entire life. I am not like other people. Other people step aside for me. Psychologists call this a grandiose self-image, and when it forms that early, reinforced by real, undeniable talent, it doesn't feel like arrogance to the person living it. It feels like the truth. And by the way, his full baptized name was 23 words long, honoring a parade of saints and relatives. Even his name was extra. Fast forward. Picasso arrives in Paris, and this is where we see the classic architecture of narcissism click into place. And I mean that clinically, not as an insult. Grandiose narcissism has a few core features: an inflated sense of self-importance, a hunger for admiration, a lack of empathy, and the tendency to treat people as extensions of yourself rather than independent human beings. Picasso checked every box with style. He reportedly told his mistress Francoise Gillot that God was really just another artist, and then added, "I am God," not as a joke, as a worldview. But here's the part that'll surprise you. His narcissism wasn't just emotional. It showed up in the pettiest ways imaginable. Picasso figured out that once he was famous, restaurant owners would never cash his checks. His signature was worth more than the meal. So he'd pay for dinner with a check, doodle a little sketch on it, and walk out knowing it would be framed, not deposited. Free food for life, powered by pure ego. Kind of like discovering a cheat code, except the game is reality. And here's a fact almost nobody knows. In 1911, when the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre, Picasso was actually brought in for questioning as a suspect. Why? Because he had knowingly bought 2 ancient Iberian sculptures that were stolen from that very museum. He panicked, considered dumping them in the Seine, and, according to accounts, was far more worried about saving himself than protecting his friend Apollinaire, who got arrested. Loyalty was never really his medium. But the darkest expression of his narcissism was how he consumed people. He allegedly told one partner that women, to him, were machines for suffering. Look at the pattern. Fernand, Olga, Marie Therese, Dora Maar, Francois, Jacqueline. He overlapped them, pitted them against each other. There's a famous story of two of his lovers literally wrestling in his studio while he kept painting, later calling it one of his choicest memories. Dorimar suffered a mental breakdown after him. Marie Therese and his widow Jacqueline both later died by suicide. Even his grandson Pablito took his own life days after being barred from Picasso's funeral. That's not a coincidence. That's a gravitational field. Okay, so here's where I'm supposed to tell you narcissism is bad and Picasso was a monster. Roll credits. But this channel doesn't do simple answers, and honestly, the psychology won't let us. Because here's the twist. Some of the very traits that made Picasso unbearable as a human being may have been the engine of his genius. Think about what Cubism actually was in 1907, when he painted Les Demoiselles de Vignon. Even his closest friends were horrified. Matisse was reportedly furious. Critics called it madness. A normal person, someone with a healthy need for approval, backs down, softens the work, apologizes. Picasso didn't flinch. Because when you genuinely believe you're a god among mortals, the disapproval of mortals is just noise. And that's the paradox researchers keep bumping into, the exact question we opened with. Studies on creativity and personality have found that grandiose narcissism correlates with creative confidence, boldness, and self-promotion, the willingness to bet everything on your own vision. It doesn't necessarily make your ideas better, but it makes you relentless about pushing them into the world. And in art, relentlessness is half the battle. Picasso produced an estimated 50,000 works across his lifetime: paintings, sculptures, ceramics, drawings. When he died in 1973, he'd never bothered to write a will, and appraisers found entire bank vaults stuffed with art he'd hoarded. He could famously never throw anything away, not even old envelopes. In my experience digging through these historical psyches, that combination, obsessive production, obsessive keeping, tells you something. He wasn't just making art. He was building a monument to himself, one object at a time. Here's the question I want you to sit with. If Picasso had been kind, humble, and considerate, would we even know his name? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I genuinely read them, and this one's going to split the room. So what's the final diagnosis from the minds of history files? Picasso wasn't a genius despite his narcissism, and he wasn't a genius because of it either. The truth is more unsettling. His talent and his ego grew from the same root, a childhood where an entire family reorganized itself around one boy's gift and taught him that gifted people don't have to be good people. His genius bought him a lifetime of immunity. Every cruelty was forgiven, every casualty absorbed, because the paintings kept coming. And that's the real lesson, not about Picasso, but about us. Because every generation makes this same trade. We let brilliant people off the hook, and then act shocked at the wreckage. Sound familiar? It should. We're still doing it today, just with different names in the headlines. The art hangs in museums. The people he broke are footnotes. Maybe the most honest thing we can do is hold both truths at once. The work is immortal, and the man was a warning. If this deep dive gave you something to think about, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And if you're into the psychology behind history's most complicated minds, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming. Tell me in the comments, which historical figure should we decode next? I'm glad you're here. This has been Minds of History, where the past gets a psych evaluation. See you in the next one.